Welcome back to another stretch with Simon. Good to have you with me. Let's start off lying down and we're going to move straight into a twist today. Remember, looking for pleasant sensation, avoiding unpleasant sensation. Now, holding all of these postures for a good length of time to really make the most of them, get into a nice deep stretch within the muscles. Starting off with this nice twist. You can shift the hip over a little bit into the center of the mat. You're rolling the knee as far as it'll go without the opposite shoulder lifting off the floor. You can either look up like I'm looking up, or you can look along that outstretched arm. Make sure that the other foot is rolled all the way over into the little toe. This is really about twisting the spine. You're getting a really nice rotation, opening up all the back joints. Now, some of the time I'm going to talk about the postures. Some of the time I will be quiet as well, but I will give you signals to change postures. That's one of the benefits of this new voiceover format, so that you don't have to be watching the screen to see what I'm doing. Try and relax as much as you can throughout. Breathe a normal breath. You don't need to breathe any particular style of breathing other than just continually breathe. There's never any reason to hold your breath. If you find yourself holding your breath, then ease off a little bit. So now moving across to the other side. Take your time transitioning from one side to another, from one posture to another as well. Could feel a little bit different on the two sides, of course. Try and relax as much as you can. So we're still in this twist to begin with. It's a really nice stretch and posture to start off a session with. Reaching each bone and joint of the spine. There are 4 main movements of our spine: forwards, backwards, sideways, and this one, which is a rotation or a twist. That's good practice to move your way through each of those directional movements as well within a practice. I mean, one practice may focus more on one than the other, but it's good to work through them all. So I'm just coming out of that second side now, just hugging both knees into the body, gentle rock before we move on to the next posture. And I'm going to go for a back bend next, so the second of those 4 directions that I just mentioned. So this is extending the spine, bending it backwards. We're starting off on the elbows and at what's normally referred to as a sphinx posture. Just propping yourself up on your elbows. It could be that you want to stay there. It could be that you want to come a little bit lower. In order to take it lower, you could take the elbows a little bit further forwards. And I've actually just lifted the elbows, which, as you can see, takes me higher up than where I was on the elbows. Now, if in order to come up, you shift the hands a little bit further forwards and then come up and find that it's the same height, you would be better to stay on the elbows. You're only lifting off the elbows if it takes you higher up. And that depends on the position of the hands before you lift as well. Now the back bend, really nice squeeze to the bones and the joints of the back. It's a movement. Of those 4 movements, this is the least common movement that we do during everyday living. When you think about our movements, when do we often bend backwards? The other movements are far more common, especially the forward bend, because all sitting positions involve flexing or bending the body forward. So back bends are rare and therefore valuable to do. You could be looking forward, you could be looking slightly up like I'm doing. You can have the eyes open, you can close them to really focus on what you're feeling. Very slowly now, rolling down. I'm going to go into a child's pose just as a counter posture. That's flexing the spine, curving it in the opposite direction. I'm really just doing that to counteract the backward bend effect. And then we're going to move into the next posture. The next posture is a forward bend. So the third of those forward movement. The third of those 4 spinal movements, and this is flexing or tipping the body forwards. Now I'm starting with Janu Sirsasana, or forward bend with one leg straight and one leg bent. Take your time. You are allowed to bend the straighter of the 2 legs. So even though you've got one leg stretched out in front of you, it can be bent. It doesn't have to be rigid and completely straight. You'll still get the same effect. The effect is either or both of a stretch to the back and to the back of the leg. That didn't make great grammatical sense to it. You're either feeling it on the back of the thigh or the hamstring, or the back itself, the muscles of particularly the lower back, but probably the rest of the back as well. And you could be feeling either or both of those things. If you tend to straighten the leg a little bit more, then you'll probably feel more hamstring. If you let the back curve, then you'll probably feel more back stretch. I'm adding a little bit of a twist there. That's optional, just adding just a nice slight stretch to one side of the lower back as well. There's no reason why you can't do something like that. It's not harmful. And put it this way, if it didn't feel nice to do that, then don't do it. That's your basic guide all the way through. Look for pleasant, avoid unpleasant. And then we're doing the double leg version of that. So coming out of the one-sided and just stretching both legs out in front. I've got them both knees bent for this. When you bend the knees, you tend to get a stronger back stretch, in particular the lower back. And then as you hold, you may just try stretching the legs a little bit straighter. Try not to let the head drop down. So at the moment I'm looking kind of towards my toes. You could possibly look slightly in front of that as well. Sanskrit name for this, Paschimottanasana, or this is a version of a classical Paschimottanasana. And I said before that we don't often bend the body backwards. We don't often actually bend it fully forwards in a really full flexion movement like this. So these are really nice to do as well. Apologise about that little beep. That's my mail program in the background. I'm just going to close that down. You can see that my body is slowly opening up and releasing as I hold this. Beautiful stretch. The feet, try and make them as relaxed as possible. You will find that if you pulled your toes towards you, you're going to get a strong stretch on the back of the leg and probably introduce a calf stretch, which is the lower part of the back of the leg. But not critical to do that. I would just relax the feet, focus on the back and the back of the leg stretch. Definitely loosening up here even more, easing into it. Deserves a nice long hold here. Speaking of time, you could time these postures. This practice is loosely based around a yin yoga practice. In yin yoga, typically postures are held for around about 5 minutes. Studies have shown that you continue to get benefits anywhere up to about 20 minutes after that. Probably not much is being added, diminishing returns. Any stretch that you hold, you want to be holding for at least 30 seconds, but over and above that, as long as you wish, if you wanted to time them to keep everything nice and even, you could set a timer and hold for a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes each posture. You can also go by feel too. Hold it as long as you like. When you feel like you need or want to come out of it, come out of it. Remember that with strong forward bends like this, give it a bit of time and space to ease out of it. So when you come down from a strong forward bend, best approach would just be to lie on your back, hug your knees in. I'm not quite there yet, but I will be doing very, very soon. And because it's such a strong opening of the joints of the back, you've got to give it a little time to just rebalance and return to its regular normal shape. Still holding this nice long forward bend here. Can tell my body really needed this one today. Now I'm slowly coming out of it, so easing back to the ground. I'm going to hug my knees into the body, then stretch them out, and let's just observe, see what happens, see how the back feels. Like I say, if you get an after effect, a tightness, a twinge, you'll know what I mean when you feel it. You just hug the knees back in. And if you don't, just enjoy a few moments in a nice neutral position. Neutral meaning lying flat on your back like this. Certain parts of the body make contact and distribute the points of pressure. So that's nice and neutral. Okay, so rolling to one side, coming up into a sitting position. We're going to do a nice cross of the leg here. So one leg goes over the top of the other. It's based around Gomukhasana. Just focusing on the lower half of the body here. You get a really nice hip stretch, a nice opening of that joint where the leg bone connects into the pelvis. I'm stretching the glute side of the thigh as well. I've added a twist here, so I'm turning and looking slightly behind, just because it feels nice to do that. As you hold it, you can adjust the feet like I just did, taking the foot a little bit further back. Now I can do. Coming back to facing forwards and just relaxing into it. You can see I'm moving a little bit, just feeling those little areas where the muscles are just starting to stretch. Okay, then we're going to ease on to the other side of this now. Take your time, never any rush. So we'll do the same thing. We'll settle into the other side and then we'll add a little bit of a twist in a moment. Just to repeat what we did on the first side. That's a little different if you compare the two sides. One side's going to be tighter than the other. That's normal. That's a natural feature of most people's bodies. An unevenness, which benefits from this practice. That's why we do what we do, to try and balance out as much as we can balance out, to change what we can change, to find and accept the things we can't change. Work with the things that we can't change, change the things that we can change. And develop the wisdom to know the difference too. Slight tip to one side because I suddenly felt that was really nice on the glute on that side by doing that. These little movements, like I say, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of movement. You don't have to be completely static. Remember, we're trying to get an effect. We're trying to feel something in the muscles that are involved in these shapes. But it is about the sensation, not the shape. It's about what you feel, not how far you can go or what it looks like. It's a sensation, how it feels to the body. That's what matters. Okay, so we're slowly coming out of that posture now. We're going to move into a sequence that we've done before in these sessions. So we're going to do a sequence of 3 movements, a lunge, hamstring, and then move it into a split. The more you practice particular movements, the better they get, as in the easier they get, the further they do go. Remember, I'm saying it's not about how far you go, but about how it feels. But of course, as you progress, you will go further and further as a natural progression. So at the moment, just stretching the front of the back leg here. So a straightforward lunge, trying to get the ankle underneath the knee so that I can be as stable as possible. Sinking forwards to feel the quadricep, that's the front of the leg on the back leg. If you remember, just recently I was having problems with my knee, which is very much healed now, but it's left me with a residual tightness right at the top of the thigh. So this is a really nice posture for that. That's why we're holding this one a little longer. And then we're moving back into the hamstring next. That's the back of your front leg that you're going to feel. So you're pulling away from the heel. I hope these verbal clues help you with your practice. So some of it you're going to be in a posture and not watching, maybe even with the eyes closed, and hopefully I'm helping transition from one posture to another. And when I'm doing that, of course, you can, as you're moving from one posture to another, you can check out what I'm doing. So you don't have to be watching all throughout, but it's good with each posture to have a look and see what is needed, sort of form-wise or shape-wise. And again, I mentioned shape, but the aim is to use the shape to achieve a sensation. And what kind of sensation? A sensation that is pleasant. You're feeling something, it feels nice. It can be deep, it can be intense. Intense doesn't mean painful. And perhaps that's the way to approach it, the way to see it. Unpleasant or pleasant. Look for pleasant, avoid unpleasant. Okay, slowly shuffling the back foot closer and closer to the front so you can switch sides. So going into the quadricep on the second side now. Sinking fully into this, feeling that nice deep stretch on the front of the back leg. One thing I would say with 2 sides to a posture, try and be as consistent as you can be. Now if you discover one side is a lot tighter than the other side and you want to focus a little bit more on the tighter side, that's fine. That is actually one strategy for balancing out imbalances. But on the whole, try and stay balanced in your practice by doing both sides at a fairly even amount of time. I'm not actually timing these postures. I think the longer you practice, the more you get a feel for how long you need to stay in a side or a posture. So now easing back into the hamstring, but of course you are welcome to time them if that proves helpful and useful. So pulling away from the heel, feeling the hamstring. So we do the quadricep, we do the hamstring of each leg, and then we put the two things together into a split. In Sanskrit, the split is Hanumanasana. Just lifting the front foot and then doing the rest with the back, trying to shuffle the back toes further and further, wider and wider. Try and relax in this, try and hold it in such a way that you can just really release, open up and relax. If you're staying tense all the way through it, it's not going to work as well. You are not bearing down on the hands. The hands are quite light on the floor, very light touch. If you're really bearing down on the hands, that means you're too wide. Final few moments in this split. Try and use the back foot as best you can to reverse the process and make your way out of it, which I'm about to do any moment now. I say that, tuck the toes and lift the knee rather than dragging the foot, which places a little bit more strain on the leg and hip joint. And today that completes the practice. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.